We are live, sir.
Hi, good evening, Ninad and Rakesh, and good evening to our audience to yet another session of Startup Buzz hosted by the CII Western Region Startup Subcommittee. This is session number 56, which, as you all know, we do every Thursday, 5 p.m. And that's when you can actually set your clock for a Thursday evening. This I think promises to be an exciting evening. And without further ado, Ninad, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself and Rakesh and run the session. Thank
Thank,
you. Over to you both.
thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Ravi, for those short introductory remarks. I'm Ninad Karpe. I chair the Western Region Startup Committee, and I have been the past chair of CII Western Region. I'm also a venture capitalist. At 100x, we have done more than 180 investments. But today, it's not about me. It's about Rakesh, and he's going to share with us some interesting insights. Rakesh is the founder and CEO of NudgeBee, building agentic AI for cloud ops and SRE. He's a three-time founder with successful exits. He's also an angel investor, patent holder, and an alumni of NIT Calicut. Welcome to this CI Startup Buzz session, Rakesh, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thanks so much, Ninad. Thanks so much, Ravi. It's amazing that how the CIA and all of you is taking the lead in organizing some of these sessions. So where all of us who are active in the startup world gets to learn from each other. So sincerely appreciate it. For the rest of the audience, my name is Rakesh, and I run an agentic startup called NudgePay. It's a multi-agentic platform for cloud ops, predominantly targeted at helping the cloud ops support SRE teams scale up their agentic capabilities to run operations at scale. So that's where we are at. We are in the around 2.5 years old, and making mistakes every day and learning and improving, hopefully, as part of the journey. Predominantly a B2B startup, focusing on large enterprises, where it becomes even more difficult. So there are lots of battle scars, and every day is learning. It's pretty fascinating and enlightening both at the same time.
Great. So today's topic is building AI that actually works. And we have selected a topic very, very specifically so that we can ask Rakesh all the tough questions, lessons from the trenches. Rakesh, you spoke about scars. Let me get on straight with the scars. I have met a lot of two-time founders, but you're one of the rare breeds with three times. Now, third time, why and how come you keep going on and on?
The second one was mostly entrepreneurial. So my where in the Sama where I worked earlier. So my founder was gracious enough to give me a lot of opportunity to do whatever it takes, and we were able to take it to a very successful exit. And instantly, he's also a leading investor for my current startup based on the successful exit that we delivered for most folks in Sama. But the thing about entrepreneurship is the fact that the 0 to 1, the 1 to 10 journey, once you get going into that, it's more addictive. I also keep on saying that you need to have a very high appetite for self-inflicted torture, because the process is not easy. But once you get a taste of it, you're always raring to go again and again because it keeps you sharp, it keeps you young, it gives you more challenges. It's the if you have appetite for, like I said, a lot of pain. This is phenomenal.
Any good words of advice for first-time founders?
Oh yeah, it's always going to get much more tougher than what it takes. And if you think that you'll be able to get in and spin something together within a year and make things happen, it doesn't normally work that out. You need to have a 5 year thought process to go through the ropes. So if you're in for a 5 year journey, you will pivot and you'll find your way. So that's my only thing. Don't think short term. Think a little bit long term at least.
Okay, don't think short term, but see long term. So, viewers, whatever questions you have, don't hesitate, just put them in the chat. I will take them as and when they come. We have exactly 45 minutes, 5:45 sharp. I will let go, Rakesh. So, don't waste this 40 minutes. If you have something nagging you, bothering you, ask it, put it in the chat. I will take them up. Let me get going with the topic, Rakesh, and let me ask you I have a lot of questions, but let me ask you some till the viewers come up with questions. You
Sure.
know, in the industry, a lot of us seen impressive AI demos. It is pretty common. Someone will say, I'm an AI company, and AI demos are can be done over a weekend. But the transition from a demo to production always is fraught with a lot of issues. And what are the biggest mistakes some founders make? And what are the words of advice you have for this transition from demo to production?
So I think a demo and a production ready system both answers two different sets of questions. A demo fundamentally is all about either is this capable of solving a problem? It takes a very specific instance. Production is all about how do you either execute reliably at scale at inputs that you did not even consider. I mean, managing that gap and having that expectations aligned to that, I think we underestimate because most founders are also very, very optimistic creators, right? So you see this first magical use case which works out. So we all pretty much get excited. Either. But the scale aspect, and that too, especially true with AI, because a significant component of your product is a black box that you don't necessarily control. So the probabilistic element of it. And then when you throw a lot of the diverse inputs to it, I mean, it just compounds. So people underestimate that you also have to understand, Ninad, that we are all transitioning from a world of deterministic software to a world of the probabilistic software.
Oh, wow.
Uh, So that element we all underestimate. So a demo at best is an indicator of the what this can potentially solve. But the long haul is about figuring out how to run it reliably at scale with a whole set of heterogeneous environments and data inputs. So get mentally prepared for that. I mean, and it's a journey. I mean, because the tail is pretty long actually, right? So it's not like that you spend 6 months and you are done. No, it's you even post a demo. It's a continuous the journey. And also what compounds the difficulty is the fact that tech is evolving. I mean, every day there's a new approach, a new setup, a new component, and how do you also adapt and keep up with that? So there's a catch up with the tech, plus they're trying to cope up with the sheer diversity of the environment, the stakeholders, the readiness, all the different aspects which comes into play. And then again, being probabilistic, even with the best accuracy. I mean, let's say if your component delivers only about 90% accuracy, which is some of the really good models, how do you take care of the 10%? And human psychology also, Ninad, we are all generally wired towards finding out what is failing because that's a aha moment, that's a smart moment, right? We don't focus on what are the things which work and how best to leverage that, assuming that it's at least 70-80% of the time. We are generally wired towards what doesn't work. So how do you reduce the opportunities for that through engineering? I think a problem to be solved, a mindset approach also to be addressed, and also a change management as part of the process that all of us as founders should imbibe as a fundamental requirement.
You know, Rakesh, I've already started getting tons of questions. I don't think I'll be able to ask my questions, but I'm going to sneak in one more
Sure.
before I take. There are a lot of questions already started piling up. So let me ask you a question which has been kind of bothering me. Foundation models are now becoming accessible increasingly to everyone.
Yeah.
Where does the real moat lie for AIs today? Particularly from India. Yeah, is it the model, the data, workflow layer, or something else?
I mean, if I had to put in one word, the model lies in the complexity in the problem statement that you're trying to address. If it's a simple problem statement, either your customers will build it themselves or the frontier model companies, the frontier labs will subsume it. So the more complex it is, the more it's a combination. The complex the domain, and you have some the data moat, and then most of us, in spite of having a domain understanding, will still not have the data moat because it's a very much of a flywheel cycle. So it takes time. But then, is it a workflow which is like multi-step, dynamic, has all kinds of paths? And if you're able to address that, I mean, at least go in the journey of addressing that. Those are the ones the frontier companies would find it very, very difficult without FD kind of an approach. Now, the next part is obviously the mode, in my opinion, it goes back to the fundamentals, right? Like Bezos has this saying, focus on the things that don't change. And when the world around is changing so fast. So the fundamental things in the enterprise world, like the you always want the fastest, cheapest, and smartest. So if you're able to solve for the troika of accuracy, the latency and cost, I mean, these three things all at the same time, very, very difficult problem to solve. It requires advanced context engineering at multiple layers. If you're able to crack that one, I mean, most founders that typically spin, and even we did the same thing too, in all fairness. They spin multiple models in a loop, connect via MCP. It doesn't work at scale. It doesn't solve the problem. And so the more complex stuff that you try to attempt, and you try to solve, that's the only moat, in my opinion. And then generally there are these generalisms like keep it simple, stupid. So you try to take the simplest path. Again, not a moat. Because if you really look at it, I mean, the most durable softwares in the world, which has been best of breed, they have all solved the things seemingly in a very simple manner, but they're using a very complex approach. And that has always been the hedge. I mean, be it Spotify, be it Amazon, being any of the streaming solutions, uh, be it Uber, I mean, and all these ones. I mean, embrace complexity. Don't go for the easy path.
Embrace
And that's only about
complexity.
embrace complexity.
Yeah.
It
So
takes longer. It takes way longer.
yeah, I'm going to start taking questions from the audience. How do you determine? It's a very simple question, but a very deep question. How do you determine whether a problem genuinely requires AI or can be solved through simpler technology? Because it's so fashionable to say I'm using AI, but do you really require AI? Or you can just use some simple technology. Very, very simple question.
No, no, I think that's a very important question.
Correct.
For the simple reason that, like an agentic company, if truth be told, my only objective is to reduce the number of model calls and make it as much deterministic as possible. To the extent that we reverse engineer what a model does and then try to convert as much of it into a deterministic fashion. And that therein lies actually the secret of solving your cost, latency, and accuracy issue. Extremely important because plug in AI for every single thing, wherever it's not required, and you run into an accuracy issue, you run into latency issue, obviously you run into cost issue. So the key is, I mean, how do you actually look at every single step that you have to do? Maybe start off with the AI and say that, okay, how can I take at least a significant chunk of this back to a deterministic approach? And if you really look at Cloud Code, for example, I mean, the fastest selling enterprise software, I mean, that entire harness is not deterministic. It is not about Sonnet or it's not about Opus. They all have brilliant capabilities. But what makes it really tick is a non-deterministic approach as the harness that they developed. So the agentic means does not necessarily mean, I mean, throw AI or models at every single step. The surefire way to the fail, in my opinion.
Okay, great. So what are the ingredients? This is another question again. What are the ingredients for AI product to be successful in the market? Very simple, just top 2, 3 points, and we'll move on to the next question.
I mean, at the end of the day, regardless of AI or non-AI, your product has to solve a real problem. And it has to answer any three of the four. It has to be faster, easier, smarter, or cheaper. And one out of the four actually doesn't work. It has to solve at least three of the four. So if you do that, even in a non-AI world, actually, it could actually work. It, but so that is fundamental. Are you solving a real problem? Number two, to the organizations. I mean, who are you trying to sell it to? I mean, are you trying to sell it to is it a B2C or a B2B? Both of these deserves different answers. So B2B, I mean, anything which shows significant savings in terms of the tangible ROI in terms of cost and speed. And the deployment is not that the difficult. I mean, that would be a good one. But these things are easier said than done because if you also in today's world, unfortunately, because of the coding agents, if you try to solve a very narrow problem, the thought process in enterprises is, oh, can't we build it internally? Because you challenge your internal teams to do that. So then you need to make it complex enough so that you don't get into this build versus buy, which is getting amplified these days. So from that particular perspective, if it's way too simple, but it's still that solves in a faster and cheaper, somebody would just copy that. There's no moat. So where do you introduce a complexity around that? But the fundamental premise of faster, cheaper, easier, and smarter, three out of these four things, if you're able to crack it, and then if you're able to solve distribution, I think you have a winner.
Faster, easier, cheaper, smarter. Ah, okay, good.
Smarter. Yeah. I mean, three out of these four has to work.
Yeah, yeah. No, you just spoke about build versus buy. So maybe that leads to my next question. If you were to advise an early stage startup today about AI capabilities, should we build them in-house or simply leverage, all the models which are there, which is OpenAI, Anthropic, and other models?
That goes back to the earlier question which you asked actually. You definitely should use frontier model and coding tools to figure out how to build and actually to build. But the functions that you build, I mean, you should really ask yourself whether that can be done in a deterministic manner. Like you originally said, can I use a simple tool or a complex deterministic software engineering approach to solve that? So rather than putting it all onto the model, for the long drawn reasoning tasks, for the long tail which you can't code, those are the ones that you should possibly use the a collection of the right models. And there also never fall in the trap of using the largest model for everything. Because so my analogy to this is like, I mean, the system, the product that we build is almost like a restaurant, right? Where the chef is the model, and the context window is the prep table, and the tokens are the ingredients and the output. So you don't need a Michelin star chef to make either a mango juice or man the coffee counter. So you need to figure out the right one. So did you get a local guy train him? Do you have an in-house chef to do the South Indian corner? So that is your open source model. So if you draw that particular analogy, figuring out the right combination of chefs for the right task, and wherever you can pre-prep it. I mean, if you really look at it, again, going back to the restaurant analogy, the McD is one of the most successful chains, but they don't cook on the fly, right? They don't dump a ton of ingredients and say, okay, build it when the customer orders. The bun comes pre-packed, the fries get semi-fried, and the process, your ketchup is there. So you figure out a way to assemble it. Maybe the coffee guy spins together a coffee. So whatever you can pre-prep without depending on the model, you should do that. You should absolutely do that. Unless the time arrives when models are far, far more evolved and they're also available freely, either like the free air. I mean, not that polluted, but the time might come, but that's not going to happen in the next 3 years for multiple reasons.
So Shivam, one of our viewers has asked a question. Let me try and simplify it. LLM layers are the same libraries running through which are companies like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. They work as librarian, is his view. You can always have a different view, which charge high salaries and make errors. This is what he's putting forward. You may rebut it, or you might have a different view. How to make the best possible how to have the best possible librarian with a bang for the buck. So
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. Go for it. One is regardless of the model family. So you have the frontier labs like Anthropic, the Google, and let's say OpenAI. They do a fairly reasonable job. I mean, they've invested tons of money into developing their models. I mean, so it's phenomenally good. But thankfully, these days, you also have the open weight models that are actually doing a pretty good job. So you don't need to pay frontier prices if you're able to leverage some of the open weight models. I mean, like at least in our platform, we, in addition to supporting the model families from Anthropic, Gemini, and OpenAI, we also make available models from Nematron, Granite, this is the IBM family, the Quen and Gemma, which is again from the Google family, and make it available because that's the only way you can, in the scale of agentic operations without paying token tax. Because if you have to pay token tax on every the background process, I mean, it's a it won't nobody is going to approve the budget for it. So there are plethora of options these days. It's become very, very easy to deploy. The key is the not necessarily to this the frontier model companies phenomenal amount of work that they've done, but figuring out what's the right model family, what's the right model within that particular family for the task, spending enough time to figuring it out, I think that's very, very critical. And none of these guys are anyway, like most of us humans, are the correct 100% of the time. So we should give them a little bit of a breather.
So there's another question from audience. What metrics should startups track to evaluate the effectiveness of the AI solutions? Effectiveness.
That's a great one. I think, and that's a boring part. I mean, we keep on speaking about evals. No engineering teams wants to invest in evals. They do it as a one, the phase thing, and then they forget that evals are extremely important because they solve three problems. They become a regression suite. They become a QA, and they also become a sales evidence. So if you do evals as a one-time thing, you'll never be able to scale with the kind of accuracy that you require. So investing in evals, and none of your engineers will want to do evals. I can put that in writing because it's very, very boring. So again, to make your AI product work, focus on the boring stuff. I mean, there's a lot of boring stuff which has to happen. It's not the sexy like the spinning together and the agent in a loop connecting via MCP and the coming up with something on screen. It's the boring stuff, the complex stuff, which brings your only moat to your game.
So, talking about boring, complex, but very critical stuff, Najbi is probably broadly in that area.
Very boring.
But you're solving a very important problem. I mean, if there is no software like Najbi, it's very tough to scale. It's very, very tough. So tell me, the topic of this conversation is lessons from the trenches. So building Najbi, what are your lessons from the trenches? Because this is really a trench software in that sense.
No, it's extremely tough because the diversity of the environment that we have to handle, I mean, it's incredibly crazy. It's not narrowly scoped. That is number one. Number two, the kind of software that we build, unfortunately, is not plug and play. There is always this last mile wiring. And every customer, even if they have the same tech stack, they use the same tech stack in different ways. So how do you cater to that? So figuring that out, figuring out the onboarding process. So these are things that we grapple with because either you can throw people at that last mile integration, or you figure out a way to lean into the build tendency within teams to figure it out themselves. So that's the approach that we are taking because we know that there's a strong orientation towards build, at least in the target users that we are going after. And we are saying that how do we lean into it? So the answer to that keeps on changing. So that is number one. Number two is how do you take care of 80-85% things work? How do you provide a reasonable the fallback for the other 15%? How do you make the change in the process that the user community follows? The much more easier to handle. Extremely tough, Ninad. I mean, but we also revel in the fact that it's a very, very tough area because that also becomes a mode because it's not for the weak-hearted. So we look at it as a positive. I mean, the only thing which makes me very bullish about what we do is freaking complex. The and you have to deal with a wide variety of homogeneity. It is not a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year game. It takes longer. So we are pretty content with it, and it also protects us from the frontier labs trying to subsume this category.
Right. Well, there is one direct question. How do you price AI products and services?
Oh, difficult, very, very difficult. I think if you look at a lot of literature, you'll see the price it per outcome, price it per outcome. But how do you actually define an outcome? How do you estimate the outcome based on past historical data? This is incidentally a problem which has been solved for BPOs, KPOs, the claims processing, so on and so forth, because the entire outsourcing has happened based on these elements. But for a category like us, the either you do it based on typically, I mean, the good correlation for us is the observability and monitoring stack, which is based on the number of events and logs and all those things processed. But then when you add an AI element to that, it doesn't make sense for folks. So then how do you make the cost agnostic of the model token tax? So that's a problem that we're trying to solve because CFOs and execs of companies like to have predictable cost. So how do you solve that problem for that? Because when they budget something, the predictability has to be there. So the payment per outcome, and nobody has been able to figure out how much outcomes has someone generated from a human standpoint in the past, and that has been already part of your fixed human cost. So why do I need to pay AI additionally, because now we can do 10x that particular number? So a very, very complicated one. We tried different models with different customers, and thankfully the way that we have designed the software is to allow for that flexibility till the time there's a standard approach evolves in the industry and there's significant maturity about how to price these products. But till then, to be very honest, no the silver bullet, the learning on the fly.
But Rakesh, tell me, and this is a genuine problem of pricing, and I hope
Yeah,
we can discuss it openly with people. So
yeah,
you mentioned about token tax. So there's an
yeah,
outcome in a deterministic software. There's outcome and there's a input cost is known. In a
yeah,
probabilistic software like AI, there's outcome which you want to have pricing. Customer wants pricing based on the outcome, but in the outcome, there's another kind of a variable, huge variable. It can be zero, it can be 100, is a token tax.
yeah.
So tokens which is to be paid are part of the solution. And how do you price it? Do you price it outside of the token money? Do our customers say, no, no, I want a full price. I don't want something
Yeah.
including tokens. How do you do
No,
it?
no, good one. And there's no easy solution to
So,
this.
yeah,
So
let the founders know what are your thoughts on this, because this is
so
something
what
that
we
founders are grappling with.
Yeah. So what we do, Ninad, is with at least in our case, we separate out these things. There's a platform cost and there's a usage cost. For the
Okay,
platform, we charge money. For the usage, we provide two alternatives to the customer. Either you use our models and then either you connect to our models, or you bring your own models.
right,
Because a lot of the large enterprises has already struck deals with the Anthropics, OpenAIs of the world, and they're far more comfortable connecting with their models.
right.
However, we are of the opinion that that won't scale either because they will burn out their Anthropic or OpenAI credits just like that. So, to at the end of the day, we want the customer to win. So, what we do is we invest in the specialized open weight small language models, which the customers can deploy in their infrastructure for 90% of the stuff. So now you're no longer paying token tax for majority of your usage, and only for the spillovers you end up paying per transaction. So that flexibility that we provide. So you have to figure out a way. So this is not about you charging money to the customer. It's about you figuring out a way to enable your customers to adopt agentic operations at scale and not get burned by token tax and then stop the adoption. So we
Right.
have to solve the problem and be very empathetic from a customer standpoint. And at least that's a view that we are taking.
Okay, very interesting. You mentioned that you invest in what small, what did you say? Can you
So, I
repeat
mean,
that?
so we use the open weight small language models
Small language.
and,
Okay.
and provide that library for our customers to deploy it in their environment. So
Okay.
now they don't have to pay per transaction till that set of concurrency is taken care of. And
Right.
then when you reach the concurrency, we have one of the most the intelligent adaptive dynamic routers, which actually moves into a frontier model for the spillover. It's not even a failover, for the spillover when we know that capacity is going to be exceeded. So
Okay.
those kind of things we try to the build being very empathetic towards the customer and figuring out a way that he doesn't get burned by the token tax.
Okay. Well, audience, you've got some very interesting practical insight from Rakesh. Viewer Shivam is asking the same question thrice, so I have to take it and please respond to it. He's saying there's a quote that technology is a multiplier to intelligence. Let me repeat, technology is a multiplier to intelligence. Then he's asking how to leverage it excellently to build a company 100x faster and better. Also share a personal experience if you could. Technology multiplier to intelligence. Just a quick response.
Yeah, technology is multiplied to intelligence. It goes without saying. The second part of the question, my friend Shivam, I'm also trying to find out. We'll connect offline because if you know, because it's more or less kind of the holy grail. From a personal experience, what you've realized is that if you solve a very tough problem with the help of technology. People are willing to give a premium. It gives you a moat for a certain period of time. But any moats also kind of the fritters away with time. So I don't know, unless you keep on the innovation track consistently, then you become another incumbent always under attack. So I mean, great companies like Amazon, or let's say I'll take Amazon as an example. I mean, the rate of innovation is way too high, and that's a if you don't continuously innovate, the leveraging technology as a great multiplier, and AI as the super hyper in the smart layer, you'll also get stuck in the incumbent mode and lose your edge over a period of time. So the key is the continuously keep on innovating. Easier said than done, because at some point of time we all tend to get complacent till some other startup comes and takes away your the money,
It takes away your lunch.
takes away your lunch. Yeah.
You have to keep fighting for your lunch. That's the beauty of
I mean, yeah. I mean, there is no the single shot success, unfortunately. Unless you are very lucky to own the a place where oil has been found, or any one of those things, right? I mean,
So, viewers, we have exactly 15 minutes more. Please keep asking questions. I'm actually giving priority to questions from viewers. So please keep posting. We'll stop exactly at 5:45. So whatever is there in your mind, please ask. Rakesh is being very straightforward, candid, honest. I'm enjoying this conversation. This question is a very deep question from one of the viewers. So you'll have to really shorten your answer, because we can have a full day session on this. How should startups address concerns around AI ethics, privacy, and bias? Now, this is a huge question, but please try and make it a short response.
I think technically there's a way to address privacy, to be very honest. If you are building an AI product, you can put in the guardrails and the safeguards to do that. So it would be engineering laziness if you don't take the effort
Yeah.
to do that. What's the third part which you mentioned?
Bias,
I,
ethics, and bias.
Again, when it comes to bias, also, I mean, there's no approaches towards addressing that. I mean, you can put in critique elements, you can put in the mixture of agents to question each other and get rid of the bias. Even if your original context setting says don't have any bias towards X, Y, and Z, you can always get it to challenge and then come up with this all costs money in terms of the token usage and stuff like that. But technically, that's a way to solve number two and number three. And what is number one? Sorry, Nanath.
So
I do not have an answer.
ethics.
Oh, that's a tough one, man. I mean, that's very tough. What is ethics for someone is not ethical for someone else. And in the cutthroat world of, let's say, the business, or not even business, I mean, even the personal stuff, I mean, it's left to the individual. I don't think there are any the approaches other than having the regulatory frameworks, regulatory bodies, or the model company itself putting in people to watch and then get rid of stuff. Now, to a large extent, I mean, if you look at any of the larger model companies, I mean, if you ask something which they think is unethical as per their interpretation or dangerous, they actually curtail that. So similarly, in your software, we can do that. I mean, that's my short approach to it. Not an expert, unfortunately.
Anthropic is hiring philosophers in the company to try and solve this, but I think it's a journey. It's a journey. So, when you mentioned open weight model, there is one question which has come. How important is model fine tuning versus prompt engineering in extracting value from open weight models?
I think, yeah, okay, this is a journey again. You should first take a particular model, find out what it's good at, and then try to double down on context engineering. And double down on context engineering and use that. Because context engineering is something which you anyway cannot escape to build a scalable solution. 90% of the time, that would be sufficient. Now, if you want to even narrow it further down, you can go into far smaller model, and then you can fine tune on the specific domain specific or customer specific use cases. It's much more easier these days compared to what it was about a year back. But also understand that that's something which you have to keep on doing on a continuous basis. There are much more smarter approaches towards doing that, rather than depending on fine tuning as an approach. But start off with context engineering. Invest significantly into context engineering, your knowledge graphs, your ontologies, your memory layers, and a super fast retrieval mechanism.
The same person has asked, what are the cost implications of deploying open weight models, which you mentioned, compared to commercial AI APIs?
It's a matter of scale. If you want to scale it up, if your volumes are very low, you're far better off working with a commercial model because it's kind of a pay per usage. But when your model scales up, when your model usage scales up, now you run into problem because the frontier models also have a capacity issue. And unlike most of us, they also have to take care of a B2C segment in addition to a B2B segment. And like all of us are aware, compute is always is a limiting factor. So at some point of time, they might rate throttle you, etc., etc. They might amp up their cost, etc. So if you believe that your product is something which drives real value at scale and it should be used at scale, then invest into the open weight models and keep both in the do both. I mean, it's not an either or because that's the part which will help you differentiate it.
So this is a very practical question a founder is facing because he's saying, he's obviously dealing with Indian customers' approach to AI procurement, traditional software, expecting upfront plus AMC. Now he's
Yeah.
asking you, he's obviously got bothered with this kind of negotiation with Indian companies. Since AI is typically priced as platform plus usage, have you faced this problem and how do you navigate these negotiations with Indian companies where they talk about upfront plus AMC kind of a thing?
Uh, Generally, but working with pure Indian companies have always been a challenge, regardless of the kind of software that you sell, for multiple reasons, because we're extremely value conscious on the buying side. But personally, I've not crossed it because we typically work with MNCs operating out of India.
Oh,
So there's always a global outlook.
okay. Should startups hire AI specialists first or domain experts first?
Interesting. If you don't have a good domain understanding, then anyway, there's no problem that you're solving, right? But then if you don't augment with an AI specialist, you don't need either an AI specialist the way we used to have an AI specialist 5 years back, right? I mean, the being an expert in all the data science models and stuff like that, things have become far, far more democratized. If you have a kick-ass engineer, wanting to go deep into what makes these models tick and what's the best way to extract value out of it. I think you're good enough. So any good engineer with the eye learning aptitude and that with the curiosity to understand how these things work underneath, they'll be able to operate on first principles, is my opinion. However, what also happens is building an AI product, there's always an R&D aspect to it because most engineers are not wired for the research orientation because they're so used to building the deterministic stuff and seeing results immediately. In the world of AI, every single thing which breaks and breaks quite a lot, you really need to go into research mode. And that in the let's say if I'm working for the last 15, 20 years in a very, intellectually, I programmatically superior way where I write a piece of code, I solve a problem. Now, when I need to go look at the data, find out why the model is working, try a different eval, so on and so forth, the mental orientation, the patience element. Patience is underrated, unfortunately. So the patience element in the kick-ass engineers is found wanting. So, and that is one of the reasons why the eval thing also doesn't work. So, having the AI specialist or the research guy, which I always used to look at in disdain early days because you always wanted to get stuff done. I think that mindset is important. But you start off with the domain guy who helps you solve a very complex the problem. And then you keep on plugging. It depends on how much money you're having. If you raise tens of millions of dollars, do everything.
So, viewers, we have exactly 6 or 7 minutes. I got chance for just three, four questions. If you have anything, just sneak it in and I'll take it up. What regulatory development should AI startups prepare for? Regulatory, what regulations you envisage AI startups that broadly this is the areas you need to be looking at it from a slightly medium term, long term perspective.
Oh yeah, multiple actually. To be very honest, I think the recent stuff around Fable being banned, so that itself is a great indicator of the future times. Now you don't know how things are going to turn out. It's not necessarily regulatory. This is state of world affairs these days. So you need to be cautious about it. So doubling down on the open weight models very, very important. Because it takes away the dependency on mostly the US driven the model firms, number one. Focusing on developing solutions for the sovereign stack. Either like, I mean, if you want to sell to Europe, if you want to sell to the US, I mean, everything stays within, nothing gets connected anywhere else. Either you can't connect to a model being served from some other location or even the Middle East. Designing for the sovereign cloud, very, very important because all these things are coming because the world is getting the increasingly, what do you call it? The isolated or separated. I don't know what's the word. So not a lot of the old globalization collaboration has gone for a toss. So be ready for it. And that also opens up a window of opportunity because at the individual level, not a lot of firms. At the individual country level, not a lot of firms who can take care of it. Yeah. Our old SaaS mindset also works against it. Uh, so generally be mentally tuned towards the providing solutions for sovereign clouds.
So, what are the opportunities for India to become a AI innovation hub? What as part of it? We are obviously not in the frontier side in the foundational models, but I mean there are so many opportunities. You are deeply in the AI world, Rakesh. So, quickly, what are the top opportunities you would say startup founders look at this?
No, no, I think it's inevitable that the AIification of every operation within enterprise will happen. Be it the HR to recruitment to back office to the accounts receivables to supply chain to development to support across the board because the technology is so powerful. However, this technology also requires the last mile wiring. It also requires the domain understanding. It requires the reinforcement learning. It requires a lot of feedback back in. So I think India, with its manpower, especially with a good base in tech, will evolve into the specialist, the FD kind of approaches for implementing AI across the board. So I know the IT sector is under a lot of attack these days for whatsoever reason. But I think when the AI adoption picks up, and the truth is, in enterprise, it's not picked up. I mean, other than the codecs and a few KPOs, BPOs kind of a thing, it's hardly there. So, but it'll pick up whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. The India is favorably placed. I mean, look at scale, look at Revolut, a lot of these companies making a ton of money. Like you mentioned about the philosopher, right? I mean, that's exactly what they do. I mean, last mile, the model correction, based on their expertise. So someone has to do it, and no other country has the scale that India offers.
I have 3 minutes and three questions, so 60-second reply for each rapid ones.
Sure. Yeah.
So, in the cloud infrastructure, now in AI, is AI truly a once in a generation lifetime opportunity? Yes, no?
Oh, yes, absolutely. No two ways about it. Absolutely. I've been in tech for the last 2 decades. Every single day, I just get bowled over. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
It's not overestimated the opportunity.
Uh, it's overestimated in the short term, severely underestimated in the midterm. That can be constrained by a lot of things outside its control, the compute policy, the power, so on and so forth. But the technology per se, I mean, today if you actually stop model development, if all the frontier companies says, I'm not going to develop the next version of 3D models, we have hardly used 10% of its capability.
And a simple question Shivam had asked, a few simple life-changing tips that startup founders can use on a daily basis. Some tips from you for startup founder daily basis.
I mean, please understand the journey. I mean, I mentioned earlier, you need to have the high tolerance for self-inflicted torture if you start in this journey, right? So you have to have. I mean, people when you earlier on, people used to speak about grit, resilience. Either I mean, be mentally prepared for that. The always have this mindset that you control only what you build, but there are so many factors against you. Understand that's the rule of the game. Develop a sense of patience, have that faith that the two shall pass, and then stay in the journey. So be anticipate failure. I mean, it's okay. I mean, we can say anticipate failure, and say that, oh, this is just a part of the journey, and then learn from it, and then iterate fast.
And if you don't mind a personal question, just to end the last question, when Rakesh is not in AI and AI is not consuming Rakesh, what do you do? How do you relax? Because AI can consume a person 100%. what are the other hobbies, activities you have? Just a quick one, just so founders have to know that they have to have life outside of work as well.
I'm the wrong person to answer that. Work consumes, but like I'm reading constantly. I'm reading and learning constantly.
Okay,
Because never ever, it's like a golden age to learn and reinvent yourself. I mean, so, but unfortunately, it's also somewhere or the other related to work, right? I mean,
great. So it's 5:45, and thank you, Rakesh. We covered a lot of ground, from pricing issues, from using various open weight models, and I think we covered a lot of ground in 45 minutes. This is Rakesh, who shared with you his real world experience, his real life issues he's facing, and he's now given so much words of advice. Thank you, Rakesh, for joining us in this edition of CI Startup Buzz. AI is everywhere. People talk a lot about it, but I thought we should have a session, lessons from the trenches, and truly you give a lot of lessons. Thank you, Rakesh, for joining us. And remember, viewers, CI Startup Buzz is every Thursday, 5 p.m. So, Rakesh, thank you. Any last one or two lines you want to add? And then we'll close the session.
thanks so much, Nana and Ravi, for having me. Really appreciate the CI Startup Bus, the forum to accommodate this for so many of us. Uh, it's an opportunity. The AI move, especially the agentic move, is a truly, truly transformational opportunity. We are still at day zero, in my opinion. The lean on it strongly. It will take time, but I think the people who are ready to wait it out, I think will stand to benefit. And like I said, complexity is your friend. Go for it.
Thank you, Rakesh. We are still at day zero, he said. Remember, viewers, thank you.
Yeah.
CI Startup Buzz every Thursday. Thank you, Rakesh. And we are delighted you could join us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Nana. Appreciate it. Thanks all. Bye bye.